Okay, great. So let's get into today's section. Okay, so today we're talking about object storage, and object storage, I would say, with respect to data center storage, happens to be one of the hottest topics in the marketplace today. IDC has done a lot of coverage on this, so we're going to reference some of the work that they've done of recent time. And what they view is that the market is now just a little bit south of $1 billion in revenue and growing many dozen% annually. I really believe that it's in the process of penetrating cloud and enterprise IT environments, and really with a specialization of moving towards petabyte scale data storage by applying a lot of the same concepts that you find in some of the world's largest web scale data centers to products that can be deployed within your own private cloud. And this is the IDC definition of object storage. So there's a lot of growth in this market. There's a lot of players in this market, and of course it's a new product category, a new way to present storage within an environment that has a lot of benefits that we'll go through today. But the primary driver around this new rate of growth is really around the new way that storage infrastructure is being deployed both in public as well as private cloud data centers, where the move really is towards a more commodity hardware model, flattening the data center and evolving to server-based platforms that leverage commodity processing, commodity memory, commodity networking, and commodity storage, so that you can lower the overall cost of infrastructure and at the same time normalize infrastructure so that it's much easier to support. And I think the best reflection of this is some I guess unrelated work done by IDC recently around the server market and how that's combining with the storage market into a new product category that they call ODM direct storage. So these are the original manufacturers of storage servers that have historically supplied some of the world's largest server companies and IT solutions companies. And they've emerged as their own category as they start to provide a simpler storage infrastructure into web-scale data centers and on-premises private clouds that are of a reasonably large level of scale. And if you look at this as just kind of a lightning rod in discussion around the change in the storage marketplace today, you can see that the trend is overwhelmingly in the direction of moving towards a commodity storage model. And this is a model that's software-defined, and object storage obviously supports. But if you just look at the growth rates, today IDC recognizes that the ODM direct, or the server-based storage market, let's call it white box, is growing at around 23% annually. And more than that, even though it has also really the highest growth rate of any specific category in what IDC tracks, if you look at the capacity that represents, it's around 40% of the total capacity represented in IDC's measurements. So this is also a reflection of the fact that commodity software-defined storage is also driving a much lower cost per gigabyte than some of the traditional approaches to deploying enterprise storage. And so we're going to reference a few examples throughout the presentation of how these concepts get employed in the enterprise data center, and a recent release of a product from HGST, which is now part of Western Digital. They released their Active Archive product, which sets an interesting benchmark in the marketplace today. They're one of the cost leaders in the space, and they advertise a terabyte that costs you just around 180 terabytes, inclusive of all the infrastructure that you need to build around a solution. And if you were to apply this just at list price, that's around 18 cents per gig. And of course, large discounts get you considerably less than that list price. So the point is that these new object storage technologies combined with commodity infrastructure can drive a significantly lower cost of not only storage infrastructure, but storage infrastructure at scale by the way that they're architected in kind of a scale-out shared nothing model. But one of the things that we believe that IDC missed as they basically had the discussion around object storage is that we believe that there's really a whole nother class of object storage represented in the public cloud space, and perhaps IDC may be to some degree confusing, let's call it the delivery model with the technology. And there are a number of examples across the marketplace today where object storage is equally attainable as part of a public cloud service. And today you have a number of different varieties of types of object storage technology represented by leading public cloud services, and we're just kind of naming a few here to give you some context on the offerings that are available to rent as a service as opposed to buy as an appliance that you would deploy in your own cloud. Examples of this are Amazon's S3 as well as their Glacier object storage services. Glacier is used more for archival and represents about a 60% cost reduction versus their primary Amazon S3 service, but at the same time it could take you as much as 4 hours to retrieve an object which doesn't support low latency applications. And then beyond that you have a number of other players that offer object storage services. One of the other notable examples is Microsoft, which features a product called Azure Blob Services. You find Basho's S3 offering basically being sold by CenturyLink, and that's represented in let's call it the object-based storage appliance market survey that IDC's done here, and you have Basho right here. So you can see that there's now a blurring of technologies that are deployed both as a service as well as in the cloud, in your own data center. And one of the more popular approaches to deploying this is to use the storage capabilities that are built into OpenStack, which is a large cloud management framework as well as cloud computing platform. And OpenStack has a object storage technology within it that they offer called Swift. And there are a number of different vendors that have taken very strong positions with OpenStack Swift. Some examples include Rackspace, as well as IBM with their SoftLayer product. Other examples would be, let's say, HP with their object storage service as part of the Helion Cloud, as well as their Content Depot, which is offered on premises with the same exact stack. So object storage is really not just limited to on-premises deployment, and the same economic benefits apply whether you consume it as an appliance or as a service, and ultimately we advise our customers to make the decisions based upon what they think their core competency is, and if they'd like to own or to rent access to object storage. But first and foremost, gain benefit from the economics and the scalability that these types of products present. So we've talked about scale, and if you look at, for example, Azure Blob Services or Amazon S3, both of these products in the marketplace represent extremely scalable examples of how large you can take object storage, where within production they're managing trillions of objects each. So certainly enabling a much larger level of scale than traditional file servers have. And there's a lot of benefits here. So with the cost and scalability benefits, the question becomes, why isn't this storage necessarily ubiquitous across the enterprise? And I mentioned earlier that the object storage market is roughly around $1 billion in size in 2014 per IDC. It's a very small fraction of the overall server and storage marketplace that is well over 50 billion. So a small fraction of customers have yet to deploy object storage, but we're seeing this number grow every year as the products mature and as customers start to adopt more kind of cloud ambitious strategies. So in doing so and in developing cloud strategies, object storage is one of the considerations that a cloud architect or a storage architect will make as they start to shape the path forward. And in considering if they should or if they should not offer an object storage, there's been a number of myths and conceptions that have kind of bubbled up throughout the years, and we wanted to, as one of the kind of leading platforms that enables the adoption of object storage in the enterprise, we wanted to just take a little time today to talk about these myths and misconceptions and provide some perspective and some clarity in cases where the market perception is not necessarily correct. So let's go through them. The first myth, the one that's been propagated fairly significantly, is that object storage is the evolution of the archive and is much slower than traditional storage. And I think it's because the use cases that object storage have generally tended to be a little on the simple side. People tend not to use them for things like databases or transaction processing systems. But on the flip side, some of the world's largest websites today are built off of object storage, either on premises or as a service, and you need to provide a very low latency experience for this. So this is a myth. I think people are confusing the use cases with the understanding of performance, and actually object storage enables a very significant level of performance if you use it for what it's good for. And so the first thing to consider of why this is the case is that object storage has a very simplified series of file system calls or RESTful API calls that it supports to allow you to get and to place your files. These are simple commands such as put, get, and delete, and really don't focus on some of the very sophisticated, at the core, they don't focus on some of the very sophisticated ways to manage files that you have in traditional file servers that have upwards of 20 years of standards built on top of a file system management model that can get a little bit bloated as time has gone on. So a very simple and lean object management model means that they can actually get very good performance from the namespace. In addition to that, these systems are built with a very different approach to namespace management, where it's more peer-to-peer. And there's oftentimes no central management of the metadata layer, and that results in a very interesting scaling model where nothing is shared and the infrastructure can be built in a purely scale-out model. So what you see here is web scale storage concepts applied to technologies that enterprise customers now have complete access to, and of course every day companies like Google and Facebook are measuring themselves on really performance, and that's through simplifying the number of operations that their technologies are expected to do and building a very scalable model, a scale-out commodity model to support that. So absolutely not the case that object storage is slow. We provide an example here. One of our partners is EMC, and they make an appliance called ECS. And they recently published just a white paper about their performance, referencing both transactions per second as well as bandwidth, and just with 2 client servers, which isn't necessarily such a large test environment, they're able to demonstrate 1,500 operations per second and 500 megabytes a second of actual application I/O, which is quite respectable and handles a random I/O pattern, which is much better than anything that you would expect from, let's say, a serial tape environment or something like that. And so the point here is you think about the applicability of this type of product. What you have is a simple technology model here, and that object storage tends to be simple in its presentation and somewhat limited in its applicability in and of itself, but at the same time provides a level of performance for applications that can take advantage of this. And one of the biggest things that we'll point to here is the fact that because this, let's say, quote-unquote evolution of tape or cloud storage is built off of disk-based storage, and because it handles random I/O very well, it lends itself to application layer deduplication, so that you can not only get cost benefit from having low-cost commodity infrastructure, but you can also manage the performance requirements associated with implementing deduplication such that you can really get very exceptional economics versus, let's say, tape-based environments for disaster recovery or archive management than you would with traditional tape that you would have to deploy in conjunction with off-site services for data protection. So here's just an example of a very high-performance implementation of object storage, and there's a number of those in the marketplace today. The second myth that we wanted to talk about today was one around this whole notion of adding an additional tier of infrastructure to my strategy. As an IT manager, I recognize that I want to take benefit of the cost and the scalability capabilities of object storage, but on the same side, What it does is it introduces a new operational model, and this stuff's really difficult to get your head around, and it creates a lot of complexity when building an enterprise IT strategy. And we can say from experience that this is in addition not the case as with myth number one. But it's not to say that there isn't some additional layers of consideration that need to be done here. So, of course, if you're going to implement a new technology in your environment, that means that there are new systems to manage and to train on. And of course, with object storage, as what you have is API addressable storage as opposed to traditional storage protocols like NAS or SAN. These storage technologies are slightly more limited in their ability, so there is no ability to kind of deploy, for the most part, object storage to solve all of your use cases. Now, there are some exceptions to this rule, which means that companies like Scality or Coho Data are focused on combining object storage with SAN or NAS technologies to provide kind of a versatile platform across the enterprise where you can start to build a much larger application framework upon it, but for the most part, object storage systems do not address all of the applications in a data center environment and are kind of complementary to a multi-system agenda. And users make the decision to kind of to look beyond these complexity challenges by recognizing some of the really substantial simplicity gains that are associated with deploying this new class of web scale storage. And if you're a company like Google or Facebook, you spend a lot of time thinking about catastrophic failures both in the data center and at the component level, and how this impacts the network, as well as just the overall operational model of managing a bunch of different types of infrastructure. And so object storage provides a bunch of different benefits that really enable a new level of simplicity, and you find these in some of the largest web scale data centers that can now be applied to the enterprise. First is the ability to flatten a data center and to enable a common hardware model for both compute and for storage, which has some benefits with respect to simplifying hardware support, as well as the management tools that really can work across both storage and compute now. And you're seeing some amount of converged infrastructure start to bubble up into the marketplace today, and that's kind of a reflection of this new mode of deployment. And so that starts with having a kind of a common hardware platform to build upon. Second is an increase in resilience and durability. And today you have the ability to build systems where, without a tremendous amount of excess infrastructure, you can achieve 9.149 level, 99.39% data durability, which means that for all intents and purposes, object storage customers, when they implement a multi-data center and a large RAID stripe across these data centers, when they implement a model like this, they're really building a system designed to never lose data ever. And it's not to say that there aren't outages, but really the platform is designed to be so well provisioned with respect to being able to recover from any catastrophic failure that there are extremely random and remote cases for data loss. And then the last aspect of this is that it's a self-healing architecture that's being popularized in the marketplace across the object storage vendors today. And of course, if you consume this as a service, you don't really have to worry about managing infrastructure. But if you're buying object storage appliances, the nice benefit of these technologies is that whether you're losing disks or whether you're losing whole servers to whether you're losing whole data centers, this technology anymore is designed to very gracefully heal itself from any catastrophic failure that happens within the enterprise. So, so these are operational benefits that we believe far outweigh the new technology introduction challenges that you have with of course, adopting object storage on top of the economic benefits and the scalability benefits that are here. So some minuses, of course, but more pluses than minuses by far. An example of this implemented into production is here you have one of our partners, CleverSafe, working with another one of our partners, HP, on a combined product, where they're showcasing an erasure coding data protection technology that basically allows you to take data, to decompose it into a bunch of encrypted and let's call parity protected slices, and then distribute those slices according to whatever data protection model you want across one or many data centers. So the point is that you can build systems where all of your data can be recovered locally. You can build systems where data has to be rehydrated or recombined from a number of different data centers. And it's really up to the user to determine how they want to implement it, but in all cases you can recover from extremely catastrophic levels of failure without any disruption to the user experience. And of course, because you're doing this while not doing replication, that means that you also get the added benefit of a capacity efficient data resiliency model. So that's just one of the examples what CleverSafe has done. One of the other approaches that that really ameliorates some of the challenges with deploying object storage in the marketplace and overcoming the conceptions of complexity is that a healthy amount of vendors in the marketplace offer turnkey appliances. And these appliances are really designed to make it very easy to purchase, to deploy, and to scale up object storage within your environment if you decide to take the on-premises path and decided that you don't want to just consume a service. So, and this includes all of the benefits of commodity object storage technology, ranging from featuring commodity processing, commodity disk, and commodity networking, and combining that with the web scale, scale-out capabilities and resiliency capabilities that we talked about earlier. So, so lots of options if you want to take the path of walking down the path of object storage without having to necessarily compromise the rigid enterprise IT practices that you aspire to adhere to. And of course, the point with all of this is really anymore you can have it your way, and it's entirely up to you as the enterprise architect to determine what makes the best sense for your organization. And the last concept that we wanted to really dispel is this whole notion that object storage is for SaaS and for software DevOps people exclusively. And I think a lot of what perpetrates this this myth or this misconception is the fact that the infrastructure is API addressable, which means that a RESTful interface really is hindering the application portability of an object platform within the average enterprise. And you know, if we look at it in the context of comparing a file-based approach to an object-based approach to storing data, historically what you would have had is a directory structure where you could have stored a traditional file with a normal human-readable file name like CTERA object cloud chat .pptx in your file system, and you know which folder to go into to retrieve that, and everything would be searchable and life would be great. But the way that cloud storage achieves this new level of scalability is by basically applying machines to managing the information as opposed to expecting that humans would do that. So large hexadecimal codes that are effectively an object identifier, where these are presented and managed via a RESTful interface. And that's something that a human could use, but more importantly, if you've got 20 years of legacy applications in your environment built for either SAN or NAS, object really isn't necessarily immediately portable to an application that you're not yourself able to read write. And that's kind of what is perpetuated this notion that object storage is for the SaaS user and the DevOps user today, and not much beyond. But the reality is that there's a large migration going on in the marketplace today, where we're seeing a lot of the classic IT technologies start to change in terms of how they're delivered in the marketplace. And we look specifically at some of the very basic file operations that happen within an organization, ranging from just storing your data in home directories to attaching documents to email storage, which requires a fair amount of SAN historically, to collaboration platforms such as things like SharePoint, to even backup. All of these processes and technologies within an organization have been built upon legacy protocols such as NAS, such as SAN, such as even tape. And anymore, as organizations think about how to adopt these file storage and file sharing processes as part of their business, they think about consuming them and deploying them in terms of applications as opposed to storage projects. And so the puck has somewhat moved now to become a $30 billion market where the enterprise of tomorrow is looking to consume applications. And applications, of course, range from a number of different things. And we wanted to take a little moment to explain CTERA and our place in this whole trend. And so what we make today is a platform that can be deployed on your object storage of choice that enables file storage, file sync, file-based collaboration, backup, and mobility across any of your devices and offices around the world. We also offer a cloud storage gateway that intermediates between our platform and the remote office that really allows organizations that have poor connectivity to the cloud or to their own object storage infrastructure to get a much better SLA at the local office and be able to store and to share files at land speed. Our platform is middleware that's deployed in conjunction with object storage that leverages object storage as the canonical storage repository of user files as well as backups. And it can be deployed 100% from within customer firewalls, so that really helps organizations control both data privacy as well as their cost. As they get to a certain level of scale, sometimes it makes sense to deploy this within your own data center. Also, of course, addresses significant data sovereignty requirements that exist within certain organizations that live in geographies that look for a very high level of data privacy from the businesses that operate within the boundaries. On top of that, our middleware effectively enables cloud scale service delivery. This is a multi-tenant service delivery platform that our customers use to make that IT as a service transformation. And of course, one of the elements of becoming an IaaS provider is to adopt software-defined and object storage technologies as a means to enable a greater level of scale as well as cost reduction. And then finally, because CTERA is very versatile in terms of how it addresses the topic of file storage, file-based collaboration, and data protection, that means that the whole platform becomes this enterprise data aggregator. And whether, regardless of where the data is created around the world, regardless of the devices that it's created on, all of the data as well as the access history is aggregated to a central point where the data can be scanned and the access can be audited so that you can gain the greatest levels of insight, security, and control on your information and integrate that into your enterprise data management and security frameworks that exist today, ranging from antivirus software that we support the operation with, to DLP software, to MDM software, and beyond. And so if I look at this in the context of an object storage initiative within the enterprise, what you have here is a highly horizontal series of file and backup tools that really enable the instantaneous adoption of software-defined storage. And on top of that, there is a storage abstraction layer that lives within the data center, within the public cloud, that allows you to mask the objectness, for lack of a better word, the infrastructure that you ultimately want to deploy for your cost and scalability initiatives, so that users don't have to worry about how they're going to connect into the system. You don't have to worry about how you're going to drive adoption of this, and ultimately you have your choice of object storage through that abstraction layer. So it allows organizations to overcome object adoption hurdles, and oftentimes we're engaging with companies that find that we're the first use case that they want to drive out to their enterprise user base to enable broad adoption of object storage and to start popularizing the benefits of it. And so that's really how we complement the knowledge worker disruption. We provide that file services platform that ultimately provides
apps that address home directories, email attachments, collaboration, and backup, both at the edge and in the cloud. And we leverage object storage today as a means to scale up our solution, as well as to drive down the overall total cost of ownership and deployment of these types of services. And so if you look at the stack today, we have an IT as a service delivery platform, as I mentioned, that intermediates with a storage connector that we've built to support both on-premises, cloud, and hybrid storage topologies. And whereas we have support for a variety of different types of object APIs and connectivity options, what we're finding is that more recently, the industry seems to be converging towards two specific object APIs as, for lack of a better word, the collection of industry standards in the marketplace today. So these are the S3 API that first was instantiated by Amazon and many other products today support, as well as the Swift API that came out of the OpenStack community, and as well as supported by several of the most popular object storage platforms in the marketplace today, whether that's on-premises or whether that's public cloud. One exception to this industry standard API definition here is our friends over in Redmond, where Microsoft has their own API implementation of Azure Blob services, but we don't believe that's necessarily limiting to the adoption of their platform because, well, they're Microsoft, and they're a pretty popular company, and they're doing all right. So, so really, you have here a market that's converging towards a standard set of interfaces, and what this enables is a few things for you as a customer. First is that as you port applications to one or two of those, you can be sure that there are other storage platforms that support them. So if you for example, if you want to eliminate vendor lock-in, certainly that's capable by adopting products that support the, let's say, the S3 API. Second is because there are cloud, public cloud as well as private cloud implementations of the systems that support the same APIs. That means it's now very easy to implement hybrid cloud topologies where, for example, you can run OpenStack or S3 in your data center, and as you want to burst up capacity to the cloud, the APIs are exactly the same. And there are even companies that are building a single platform that sits across both of them, such as Cloudian. And then finally, really what it allows you to do is to future-proof your application agenda, because now organizations can not really have to worry about is their object storage platform of choice going to ultimately be viable as the market continues to evolve, because everything's converged onto a single, I should say, a single collection of APIs that even between Swift and S3, there's just a tremendous amount of similarity where they're slowly converging even into just one API. And so, so we're CTERA, and we have a platform that's designed to enable organizations to leverage object storage to enable the scale of our solution. And we have today customers that are deploying tens of thousands of gateways and hundreds of thousands of users onto a common system that enables the sync and the storage of data all around the world, centralized back to an object storage system that reflects that ability to scale our platform. And so today we've integrated with a number of the world's leading object storage platforms. Here's a list of them as they are today. And we'll continue to add more as other ones become more popular. And of course, having this commonality of interfaces, whether it's S3 or Swift, means that it's very easy for us to continue to add platform support as new and different vendors here support also those interfaces. So the other thing that we wanted to point out, though, is that it's not just about supporting object APIs. When you think about defining your object agenda, more than just object-enabled applications, we're really, CTERA's platform is something that is very complementary to web-scale infrastructure and enables the cloud builder agenda. And so we think about this in terms of mirroring up the capabilities of object storage with our capabilities as well. And so with object storage today, you can build secure data buckets, for lack of a better word, object buckets. And we will use these as tiers within a CTERA file services infrastructure. And we will be able to build multi-tenant data management models on top of these buckets where we can logically isolate a customer's data to one or many buckets. And so it enables a very secure storage model that is complementary to the object storage concept. In addition to that, just as object storage is web scale infrastructure, what CTERA's platform delivers is the ability to deploy effectively a cloud ops management and service delivery model on top of software-defined infrastructure. So, our platform is built with all of the service automation and the scalability tools so that our organizations that choose our product can very easily deploy it out to tens to if not hundreds of thousands of users that are syncing their files to our platform or protecting their files on our platform. And then finally, object storage, as I mentioned earlier, supports both on-premises as well as cloud delivery models, and it should come as no surprise to you that we do as well. So, so actually, what I didn't reference here is the public cloud services that we support, in addition to Azure, which we listed here. Of course, Amazon Web Services, SoftLayer, and Verizon are some other examples of some of the largest public clouds that we support, in addition to the on-premises appliances that are called out. And so the point is that our customers have a lot of flexibility, and the platform is relatively agnostic, which means it works with your infrastructure of choice, and even is capable of building tiered environments where our customers, at times when they want to put certain classes of users in one data center and maybe certain classes of users in another, let's say, public cloud, they can build a hybrid environment that supports a very flexible topology. And so really our objective is to enable the cloud builder as you're also enabling greater levels and more modern levels of enterprise productivity. But really, by virtue of the topic today, we expected that a lot of the customers on the call would really be thinking about this from the perspective of the infrastructure level. So we wanted to highlight one of the common comments that we get from our customers that think about their software-defined storage strategy. And oftentimes you'll find that CTERA is the first use case that gets deployed as part of an object storage initiative. And why do customers have this initiative? Well, they're looking to start to ramp the organization onto a specific new software-defined deployment model and cost curve. They're looking to become more agile in how they deliver IT infrastructure and services out to their customer base. And in order to justify the initial footprint of object storage in an environment, oftentimes we'll get the call for things like, let's say, an enterprise file sync and share project or an endpoint backup project, or call it what you will. But this is largely, not that, of course, CTERA provides a lot of value for the use cases that we service, but there's a broader IT initiative going on within the enterprise where software-defined strategies that start with an object storage layer living within the software-defined data center, either as a service or as your own cloud. What that means is that you've established a secure footprint that ultimately can be used for other application development that happens within the environment. And this whole topic of DevOps is extremely popular in the marketplace today as organizations look to monetize their customer bases in new ways and develop up more applications to deliver efficiency. What that means is that by establishing a footprint of object storage within your environment, as your user base that's doing development looks for infrastructure that they can start to develop and test their new apps on, it's immediately available as an extension of what's already been it's being consumed for CTERA. So, so what that limits is this whole notion of shadow IT, where developers will go and just subscribe to their own infrastructure, which has a whole host of challenges associated with it as you kind of advance the efforts that they make. So let's say a developer gets tasked to make a new app, and they go and swipe a credit card in a pure public cloud. First, the question is, well, should that have been implemented in a virtual private cloud that's owned by the IT organization to support the security requirements that the customer has? But then the other implications really associate with how those applications move ultimately into production. And what we're finding is that there's a lot of inertia today in the marketplace where organizations will start DevOps projects in a pure public cloud, and then they'll want to move them within a VPN, either on premises or in a virtual private cloud. And so by starting the process at the right time in an environment that you can ultimately scale into production to, it limits the amount of complexity of application migration when it goes time to launch the solution, and at the same time just eliminates any of the security concerns that happen all along the way. Of course, it's also a better cost control because the IT organization is in the driver's seat from determining what's the most optimized, what's the most cost-optimized platform to launch DevOps projects from. But the point with all of this is that you can't have that discussion with your developers unless you have some sort of operational system in play. And so that's why we get brought in. For example, this quarter, we just launched with one of the world's largest cable companies a very large file sharing and collaboration solution that really was their first step along the path of implementing an OpenStack environment that was inclusive of object storage out to their user base. And so there's a number of proof points around the market. We wanted to highlight one of those. This is a customer of ours, Texas Department of State Health Services. And really what Texas was looking for was not object storage at all. They were looking for remote office file services, and then mobile collaboration and remote collaboration around files with the ability to securely sync and share files. And so in using the CTERA platform, the ancillary benefit of this is they were also able to implement the system in a virtual private cloud using Amazon's S3 storage. And because they abandoned traditional methods of remote office file services, and because they adopted an IT as a service delivery model using CTERA's service automation tools, they were really able to cloud enable the DR of all of the data they were creating at the edge using object storage. They were able to implement a modern way of file sharing and mobile sync on a HIPAA compliant VPC that realized massive savings. And you can see here that in the first year they're saving something in the order of $500,000, and the savings just compounds after that for years 2 and beyond. So about 75% total cost reduction Texas is anticipating. Part of that has to do with deploying more agile IT as a service deployment platform, and part of it has to do with leveraging object storage as a cost-effective means of aggregating all of the customer's data to a central cloud. And so in summary, today what we talked about really was object storage now being a viable and fast-growing technology that eliminates hardware and software lock-in at the cloud level, with the ability to consume this new style of technology both as a product as well as a service, and even in hybrid cloud topologies, where new web-scale concepts really enable much higher levels of data resilience and infrastructure resilience than what's been available with traditional storage architectures, driving down overall total cost of ownership, ranging from the cost of the actual infrastructure to the cost of management. And a smart object strategy really starts with horizontal use cases that you can deploy within an environment, really to get the conversation going about the benefits of object storage and to popularize the platforms within an organization. And that's where companies like CTERA come in. So just as a quick one about us, for those of you that don't know us, our mission is to enable enterprises and service providers to deploy secure data services from the infrastructure of their choice. We're one of the hot startups in the marketplace around the topic of cloud storage today. Our business is growing many 100% per year. We're one of the Gartner cool vendors in the space, and a venture-backed company with offices all over the world. And you can see that we're validated by today some of the world's largest customers that have really made that decision to implement a more modern means of file services at the edge, as well as for their enterprise users. And in conjunction with this comes a very strong trend towards using object storage as a very efficient but also simple means of aggregating all of the user data, protecting it, and syncing it across the enterprise. So that's who we are, and hopefully you're a little bit more fluent on the topic of object storage through this presentation today. If you want to learn anything more about this topic, of course, you can go online to CTERA.com. You can also feel free to email us at info@ctera.com, and you can find us microblogging all day long on @CTERA on Twitter. So that's it. I'm going to open up the floor for any questions. Any questions today? No, that one was pretty self-sufficient, I guess. Okay, well then, if there's nothing, then I'll thank everybody for your time today. And if you have any questions, you can just feel free to email us, or you can email me directly at jeff@ctera.com. Happy to answer anything that you have. And thanks so much for your time, and we look forward to talking with you again next time.